Welcome to the life you crave. Simple and sustainable weight loss for women who have better things to do than diet. I'm your host, Leah Pinelli. I help ambitious, badass women stop overeating, overworking, and overgiving to lose weight from a place of love. I'll help you simplify weight loss, end your overwhelm, and create the life you crave. If you like what you hear, please like and subscribe to this podcast. Let's get started. Hello, my friends, and welcome to the Life You Crave podcast. Today, we are talking about what to do if you have gained a bit of weight on your summer vacation during summer travels. I know for me, I spent a lot of time traveling this summer, and I enjoyed every minute of it. Travel is a really important part of the life that I personally crave and intentionally design for myself. So it's important to me that the way that I eat, both at home and when I'm traveling, is in support of the life that I crave, right? The last thing that I want is to have to think about my life in terms of my daily, boring, mundane drudgery of a diet and then going on vacation, binging and living it up, and then coming home and none of my pants fit. That is not the life that I crave. For me, the life that I crave really looks more like a life that supports travel, that supports eating good food and experiencing the cuisine of different places. It's really important to me, but also doing it in a way that feels supportive to my body and supportive to how I feel best in my own skin, so that when I come home, my clothes still fit. So today I'm going to share with you what to do if you have put on a few pounds over vacation. And by the way, these tips work whether it's a few pounds or if we're talking about even more than that. So the first step in my 4-step process that I'm going to share with you today is to first and foremost, and this is really important, so don't skip this step. This might sound like a light step or a soft step, but it is a crucial step. So number 1, write this down. Notice your thinking. What are you making this mean? So you've come home and maybe your pants are a little tighter, or you've stepped on the scale and it's definitely up, or maybe you're just afraid to put on your pants. So you're living in skirts and yoga pants until you feel like you've dropped this vacation weight. I want you to really dig in deep and notice your thinking here. What are you making it mean if you did gain some weight on vacation? What are you making it mean about you? Really think about this. Now, if you don't have pen and paper in front of you, because you know that I'm a huge fan of no extra time, especially for my working mamas out there, I'm expecting that you are listening to this podcast while driving or doing dishes, folding laundry, whatever the thing. So I highly encourage you to head over to leahpinelli.com/goodies. That's GOODIES. And you can sign up for my weekly email where I actually send this stuff directly to your inbox. I'm going to send you all 4 of these questions so you don't have to worry about jotting them down now. They will be waiting for you in your email inbox. That is leahpinelli.com/goodies. GOODIES. So take the time to notice your thinking. I encourage my clients to write it down in a journal or type it into your phone, right? The notes app on my iPhone is like a book for me. I take so many notes in there. And this might be something that you decide to jot down in the notes app, on the back of a napkin, wherever you need to write it down. Really, really investigate, interrogate in a loving way. What are you making this mean about you that you've gained weight on vacation? We have a tendency to make a bit of weight gain, some overeating, some overindulgence mean something awful about ourselves, right? So, for example, let's say that you've taken a trip to New York. And now those of you who live in New York, imagine you've taken a trip to California, or even better, you've gone to Mexico or Italy or Peru. Imagine that you have gone abroad and you really lift it up, right? So if you were in Mexico, maybe you had margaritas every single night and enjoyed the most amazing chips and salsa while you were there, and all of the enchiladas and all of the amazing food, and you found yourself stuffed every single night. What are you making this mean about you? I'm guessing if you're anything like how I used to be or how my clients currently are, you're making it mean that somehow there is something wrong with you. How could I have done this? How could I have let myself overeat to the extent that I did on my vacation? Why did I insist on having ice cream every single night or 5 nights or whatever it is? Why do I do this to myself over and over? I'm kind of chuckling as I'm saying this because when I was in my 20s, my best friend, still to this day, she used to always tease me because we would go out and party and I would have too much to drink. And then the next day we would always end up going to there in San Francisco are some 24-hour taquerias, at least there were back then. And we would go to El Farolito in the Mission and I would eat a whole burrito. And then the next morning I would always wake up and say, who let me eat that burrito? And my bestie thought it was hilarious. But that's how it goes, right? You go on vacation, you live it up, you're doing all the things, you're traveling a lot. And when you return back home or back to sobriety in my case, you really question, what was I thinking? Who let me eat that? What was I doing? And then we make it mean something about ourselves. And it is damaging to our self-esteem, to who we are. I'm bad. I'm wrong. I have no self-control. I have no willpower. How have I done this again? How have I let this happen again? That is damaging not only to our self-esteem, but to our self-confidence. And that creates a vicious circle, meaning you overeat, you overindulge. So therefore you feel you have a thought like I'm bad. I'm bad at this. I'm bad at life. I'm a bad person. Why can't I just stick to my diet? I'm bad, bad, bad. That feeling or that thought of I'm bad creates a feeling of shame. And all of us do the same thing when we feel shame. We hide. We hide from others. We hide from ourselves. And a lot of times we don't even notice it because we're in this avoidance pattern that we don't even notice. So then when we're in this state of shame and we're hiding and avoiding, maybe avoiding social events, maybe avoiding looking at ourselves in the mirror or stepping on the scale or even getting dressed, we're avoiding it. We often end up repeating the pattern, right, of overeating. Because when we're in a shame place, we are not inspired to treat ourselves well. We are simply in this vicious circle. And one real pitfall here that I want to alert you to, so pay close attention to this part, is we will often, when we're in that shame spiral, get a case of what I call the F-its, as in the letter F and then the word it's, F-its, as in the F word and it's, right? A case of the screw its for the purpose of this podcast episode. And what I mean by that, and I'm guessing if you listen to my podcast regularly, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It's oh, well, F it. I already gained the weight. I already drank the margaritas. I already ate the ice cream. So therefore, I might as well continue, right? So that's where I know I am so guilty of this, you guys. I come home from vacation and I'm like, oh, well, what's one more night, right? And then the next night, well, what's one more night? And what's one more night? And the next thing I know, I'm not giving my body the break that it needs from overindulgence. And I'm not, most importantly, slipping back into the identity of a woman who treats herself exquisitely well, who lives the life she craves, who lives la dolce vita. So really watch out for the F-its. And when I say watch out, what I mean is watch out for the thinking that's causing a case of the F-its. So that is step number 1 in our 4-step process. Notice your thinking. Don't brush past it. Jot it down. It is so important that you allow your thinking to surface to your level of consciousness so that you can release that thinking and repattern that thinking. That is the work that I do with all of my clients. And it is so, so invaluable in our lives for really changing our habits, changing our behaviors, and changing our patterning, because our thinking creates our feelings. Our feelings drive our actions, and our actions drive our results. So just make sure you're not getting stuck in a shame spiral or a self-loathing spiral. Step 1, notice your thinking. Step 2, reflect. But here's the key here, and you guys have heard me talk about this a lot. Reflect, not just reflect on, oh, I should have done this, I should have done that. Woulda, coulda, shoulda, right? When we use that term should, we are in a place of judgment. And judgment equals shame, right? We are not going down the shame path. It doesn't work. It's ineffective. If it worked, it would have worked by now, right? So no judgment here. Instead, I want to invite you to reflect on your choices, on your behaviors on vacation with curiosity. Reflect with curiosity. And by the way, you guys, I'm talking about vacation on this podcast, but this can apply just to like last night. I mean, you don't have to have been on vacation to have overindulged. And my definition, by the way, of overindulging is consuming to a point where you no longer feel good, right? So my definition of indulgence might be very different from yours. So really reflect with curiosity. What does that look like? What that looks like is we want to intentionally get curious about, what was the experience that I was after here? I'm going to give you an example from my own life. So my best friend, who I mentioned earlier in this podcast episode, her name is Katika, so we'll just call her by her name. When I lived in Spain back in the early 2000s, 2003, 2004, Katika came to visit me and we went over to Italy together for a couple of weeks. And being Italian American, there were so many foods that I was so excited to try. And I will never forget that we were walking in Venice and there was this bakery that had something I had never seen before in the window. They looked like little beignets, but a little bit different. They were fluffy and doughy looking, both things that I totally love. And they were advertised as being fried Zavignon. Now, Zavignon is an Italian custard that my mother made growing up that I had never seen on a menu anywhere. I mean, it's just something that I had at home. And it was something that my mom would make for birthdays, very special occasion. And she would put it in these beautiful glasses and put berries on top. So it was like this custard in these beautiful kind of, I guess they were custard glasses, but they were fancy. And she would put them in the fridge and we would see them as she was preparing the meal. And we'd be so excited because tonight we got to have Zavignon. And we just had the custard with the berries. I had never even heard of it being the filling for a, donut. So I was so excited to try this. And it did not disappoint. To this day, it is one of the most memorable things I've ever eaten in my life. It was so delicious. So of course, I didn't eat just one. I ate many of them. And I ate them every time we passed by these bakeries, right? I was like, oh, they have it here too. Oh, they have it here too. And I ate my fair share and then some of the fried Zavignon. Now, in hindsight, I do not regret eating the fried Zavignon. I mean, this was like one of the most memorable moments of my life, right? I do not regret eating it. However, when I reflect with curiosity and I ask myself, okay, why did I eat so many of them? Because one of them is the memory itself. Just that first bite. I'll never forget where we were, tasting it for the first time, just being totally mind blown for how delicious it was and how special it was to me in particular. Did I really need to eat 3 and 4 and 5 in order to get that invaluable experience? The answer to that is no. And in fact, as I've talked about a lot in this podcast, there's a point of diminishing returns, right? And so when I think, where did the pleasure stop? Because the pleasure was certainly in that first we'll call it a beignet. It was definitely in that first one. But at what point did the pleasure factor start to deteriorate? Did it start to diminish and into the zone of, I no longer feel good. I'm starting to have negative associations with this food now because I am overdoing it. And for me, that point was actually with the second beignet, the second fried Zavignon. It was at the second one. But I didn't have the consciousness then to recognize that. And so that's why I kept eating it. Because, a lot of times we think, oh, it's delicious, so more is better. But in fact, when it comes to food, especially rich, sugary food like that, more is not always better. In fact, it's rarely better. So upon reflection, I can see that. I couldn't see it in the moment. In the moment, my dopamine was firing. I was enjoying it. Forget it. All bets are off, right? But this is why this second step is so important, because reflecting with curiosity is actually the first step to behavioral change going forward. And I'll explain that to you in steps 3 and 4. Now, to be clear, the first step in my process is to notice your thinking. And the reason that we do this is because you must get out of the shame spiral in order to learn anything from this reflection. So this is something that, I have a master's degree in education, and I was a teacher for 15 years. And it's, common knowledge that students cannot learn if they are in a place of shame or fear or anxiety. Well, it's the same with us. If I want to learn from this vacation, if I want to learn how to stop overeating and overdoing it and going into that point of diminishing returns, if I want to stop doing that and really maximize the pleasure of enjoying one fried Sauvignon and then allowing that memory to serve me for the rest of my life, if I ever want to learn how to do that, I have to be in a learning mode. And in order to be in a learning mode, I have to notice my thinking first. So in order to reflect with curiosity, you do need to start by noticing your thinking. But reflecting with curiosity is now the first step toward learning how to do it differently. Make sense of your behaviors. Of course, it makes sense that I would overeat the fried Sauvignon. I mean, it has all of these memories from childhood. It is freaking delicious. And the experience, when you reflect with curiosity, I always like to ask myself, what was the experience I was after? And sometimes the answer to that is really simple. It's just pleasure. I wanted the pleasure of tasting something so new, but also so familiar, right? Especially being far away. I was very homesick when I lived in Spain and traveled through Italy. And it was so, so comforting to have something so familiar, but yet so novel, because my mom had never prepared it that way. So I was after this really rich experience. Making sense of the behavior of overeating it makes sense why that would happen. But also in hindsight, I can reflect that I actually didn't need more than one to have that experience that I was after. So that brings me to step number 3 in our 4-step process, which is the redo. So now you've reflected with curiosity from this very open and loving place with yourself, made sense of your behavior, considered the experience that you were really after. So now that you're clear, I'm clear on the experience I was really after. I wanted this experience of pleasure, of deliciousness, of familiarity with home, and also of something new and novel. If I could go back and do it differently, this is the redo. So ask yourself, if I could go back and do it differently, how would I do it? And really play this out. I want you to use the faculty of your imagination. The faculty of your imagination is the thing that is one of the main things that puts us at the top of the food chain, right? It is this higher order advanced thinking skill that we have where our human brains can imagine alternative realities, right? And so if you just take your brain back through images, go back and imagine, okay, so here I am, me and Katika, we're walking through the Venice, canals or whatever, wherever we were. And I see the fried Sauvignon and I light up and I get so excited, just like really happened, right? These are all the parts I want to keep, because there are parts of your memory, there are parts of your reflection that you likely want to keep. You don't want to get rid of the whole thing. You don't want to say, I wish I'd never been to Venice and I'd never tried the fried Sauvignon, right? Like that's not the life I crave. So instead, I'm walking through, Katika and I see it. And I remember Katika didn't even try it. She wasn't nostalgic for it. Her family did not make Sauvignon growing up. And so I see it and I get my fried Sauvignon. And I remember I would do exactly the same. I was standing there in the middle of the street and it was in a little wax paper and it had some powdered sugar on the outside. And I remember biting into it. And I remember just like being blown away with how good it was. And then in my redo, I would have only got one and I would have just eaten that one and enjoyed it profusely and then moved on. And then when I saw it again in other bakeries and other cafes, I would have let that experience of seeing it again recall the memory, that beautiful memory of standing there in the Venice sunshine, eating the fried Sauvignon. I would have allowed it to recall a beautiful memory without necessarily trying to repeat it. That is how I would have done it differently. I would keep the parts that felt good and vivacious, and I would leave out the parts where I overdid it by eating 2, 3, 4 of them. So that's step number 3, redo, and really picture it. If I could go back and do it differently, how would I do it? Again, you're not doing this from a place of I should have. And this is something that I've noticed with clients that often when they're telling this part back to me, they'll say, well, I should have only ordered one. I say, no, we're not doing shoulds. Remember, should evokes shame. Instead, we're actually pretending like we're redoing it. You're visualizing it. You're using the faculty of your imagination to imagine having done it differently in real time. And then that brings us to step number 4, which is revisioning, making a plan for the future. So when you're making a plan for the future, what you're doing, and by the way, this is what we do as educators in classrooms all the time, right? Is we can actually project ourselves, again, using that beautiful faculty of our imagination, project yourself into the future. And now you're not necessarily, I'm not going to project myself back in Venice with the same cafe, although I could, but I'm going to actually project myself on a vacation. Let's say I'm going to go back to Mexico because that's one of my most commonly visited spots and one of my favorites in the world. And I might imagine myself having a similar experience in Mexico, right? Where maybe I love custard. So maybe I see some amazing custard that I've never tried before that looks so beautiful and perfect. And it reminds me of something from growing up in the Mission. Who knows? Who cares? The point is that, I didn't grow up in the Mission, but like I was referring to my experience with me and Katika and the burritos in the Mission in the middle of the night in our 20s. But I'm going to then really play out how I will do it differently next time. So how I will stumble upon a beautiful bakery in, Zihuatanejo in Mexico, and I'm going to feel the urge in my vision. I'm going to feel that urge to get 2, 3, and 4 of these little donuts instead of 1, right? And I'm going to just notice the feeling in the moment. So again, I'm using the faculty of my imagination, projecting myself into the future. And I notice, ooh, there it is. There's the urge to eat 2, 3, 4, 5 of these delicious treats. And then in my imagination, I am going to picture myself taking a deep breath and really recalling my time in Venice, 20 years ago, but really recalling it even in that moment in my projected experience in Zihuatanejo. And I'm going to imagine myself eating 1 and allowing that to feel so satisfying and so nourishing and so exciting and fun and new and novel. And then also feeling really good and even really proud that I recognize that if I were to have a second, I would be entering into that point of diminishing returns. And that is going to actually erode this experience. It is not going to enhance this experience. So I would actually feel really good and really empowered because I'd be like, wow, I got to taste this amazing, delicious, delicacy from this, local spot. And I got to do it in a way that was pure pleasure without any of the regret or guilt or shame that might come along with overdoing it, not to mention the upset tummy. So let's recap these 4 steps together. The first is you have to notice your thinking right now. What are you making it mean about you if you have gained some weight or overdid it over your summer vacation? 2, reflect on your behaviors, your experience with curiosity. Make sense of your behaviors. What was the experience you were after? Do it with compassion. Step 3, redo. Really use the faculty of your imagination to go back and pretend that you are redoing the experience. You are doing it differently in your brain, using images, using your imagination. How would you do it differently? No shoulds here. Which parts would you keep? Which parts would you redo? And then finally, step 4, envision how you will do it differently next time. Remember, creating the life you crave likely includes vacation. So use this as fertile ground to practice ahead of time, visualizing how you can be someone different on vacation, somebody who doesn't overdo it, but still enjoys every single minute of her vacation. And the last thing I want to leave you with is important, because I do want you to feel like you not only have learned for next time, but that you have some insight as to what to do to actually reverse the weight gain that maybe you have come home with. And I want you to know that I will be doing future episodes on that. And I've done quite a few episodes on that in the past, but I'll just leave you with today the most important concept for releasing unwanted weight, which is you have to eat foods that you love, that taste amazing, and that allow your one unique body to drop weight. So this is what my clients do, and this is what I do. We go on vacation, we come home, and we return to a way of eating that is what we call our protocol, which is basically it's a way of eating that is customized for each individual, but that tastes really freaking good, a way that you love, a way that feels good, a way that you digest well. It's something that you can look forward to. And it allows your one unique body to live at its natural weight. So paying attention to eating in a way that feels like love, that feels satisfying, and that allows for maximal vitality. There is no restricting or depriving involved because that doesn't feel good. But it does need to result in weight loss, and that can look different for different people. So I encourage you to find your own protocol that feels like love. Or if you're like, I don't even know how to do that. I've done every diet in the book, Leah. I wouldn't even know where to begin with that because the foods I love don't allow me to drop weight, or the foods that allow me to drop weight, I really don't love. I can help you with that with no extra time, meaning we can have a chat, head on over to leahpinelli.com and you can book a call with me and I can help you through that process. Okay, my loves, so good to see you here on the podcast and I can't wait to see you next week. Ciao, ciao.
You've been listening to The Life You Crave. I lost 30 pounds years ago without dieting, willpower, or deprivation. I'm on a mission to help other women, including you, do the same. You can book a free weight loss strategy session with me over at leahpinelli.com. That's LIAPINELLI.com. See you on our next call or on the next episode. And remember to like, subscribe, and leave a comment on iTunes.